I wanted to introduce Mike. Mike is the manager of digital communications at the University of Maine. He's responsible for their overall web presence and marketing strategy for their land and sea grant institution. The flagship campus of the University of Maine system. He assists in branding their websites through its WordPress content management system, and he's passionate about the potential for a robust internet presence. He's managed enterprise websites for over 20 years and joined UMaine in 2014. So,
hey everyone. So here we are, second day, right before lunch. So I'll try to perhaps give you a little bit of extra time to get first in line. So, I'm Mike Kirby. Been at the University of Maine. Been doing this for a while. My first website was a bulletin board system that I built when I was in high school, back before the internet was public, and been kind of doing that ever since. So I've been through some redesigns that went well and some that did not, and I think the common element has been good or bad communication. So that's what I'm here to talk about. It's not WordPress specific, but it absolutely is something that would be useful for higher ed in general, because you got to really corral all these people to be on your side as you're going through this process. But I have a beard now, so I need to update my photo. So timeline, real quick. I won't go. Oh, Messenger is now active. What's this thing? Hang on a second. There we go. Okay. So timeline. I won't go into much detail here. Just project is not the focus, but on the communication, we started around summer of 2014. Went through the process. The really work began winter, spring of 2015, and then fall of 2015 was when we launched. So quick turnaround process compared to some of these. I've been on one redesign project that went on for 5 years, as they were also trying to figure out what CMS they should choose. One of the things we really did decide upfront was we're not switching from WordPress. I highly recommend, if you're in a CMS, don't switch unless it's something you just cannot do. It is a painful process to switch your CMS. So pre-project communication, that's the time to take stock. I had just joined University of Maine, so it was a great opportunity for me to take stock in general.
oh, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Went out, so I'll be right back.
Okay. So reach out to your stakeholders. That's your opportunity before you really get the project going. At UMaine, we assembled a web advisory group of representatives from the different areas of campus. Really had to try and struggle to get faculty involved. So it was really finding surrogates for the faculty that had their interests in mind that could spend the time in these discussions. Focus on the pain points, but most importantly also what works well. What would people be upset if they lost in your redesign? Set expectations for involvement with the project phases at this point, because you want to make sure that they understand what you're going to expect them to contribute as the project gets started. With our web advisory group, it was really good. We made it clear that they're going to be there to tell us what is good about the site, what they need from the site, but they're not going to be having to go to weekly meetings for all this stuff. So setting the scope, that's also what you do here. Set your scope to address those priority pain points. Again, clearly communicate the scope as the project is pitched, approved, and kicked off. You don't want people to misunderstand what you're doing with website redesign when they approve it. You don't want them to suddenly realize it doesn't have e-commerce or it doesn't have search. You know, these were the things that we decided were out of scope in order to meet our hard deadline of August of 2015. The large multi-sites, consider the idea of not flipping your large multi-site environment all at once, but setting up a migration process. For us, this was easy because we had been using WordPress since 2009, 2008, and so we had an older style system of how the static content was referenced. We wanted to switch to the more modern style, so we were going to have to migrate everything anyway. Just do it piecemeal. Solution discovery and design, communication during the project.
Sorry.
Yes.
So in setting the scope, how is that scope communicated out to everyone?
That will be, yeah, I'll be getting to that. So in the small web advisory group, we had decided and agreed upon those things were out of scope in order to get the pain points that we had addressed first, with an idea that later phases would deal with some of this other stuff. At a later point, when we communicate to the broader community, that's when that scope is communicated. Yeah. So it was one of those, we're not asking if it's okay, we're telling you this is what we're doing kind of thing. But this is, during solution discovery and design, you loop back those people that you've had on your group that you've been consulting with, and just check in with them. Make sure that you're ensuring you're addressing these pain points. For UMaine, decisions were made. For UMaine, we made these decisions within our marketing communications department for the most part. Only occasionally, every few weeks, checking in with the web advisory group. We conveyed their progress and updates through email a lot. And then again, the process of them seeing their input in action with the plan helped validate that their input was having an impact. Tactics to keep things on track on this is you minimize those weigh-in points, touch points on the design process. Avoid that scope creep. Refer to the original documented priorities as things come in, because they'll see things with this design that they're like, oh, this will be great, and I can do this and this, and like, we're not going to do that for August 2015. We're going to do that after we're live and we have other things to layer upon it. Begin your personal outreach. If you're going to just do these key sites to migrate, start looping those people in. Give them pre-advanced notice that this is happening, so that they're part of that inner circle club of knowing that this project's happening. Get their buy-in, and we were very lucky in that every site that we asked about this, even one of the sites where the person was just, I'm too busy, they still said, I'm too busy, but it's okay. We'll be part of this part of this launch. So this is where your designers are off doing their thing. Your coders are off doing their thing. As the communications professional, you have time to develop your communication plan for the campus, to let your internal audience and your external audience know about this stuff. So take some time, map out these key dates, working back from when hopefully your project timeline from the developers gives you an idea of when screenshots will be ready, when the system will be stress tested, when key sites are going to start migrating in so that people can work on it. And layer in the communication to the broader community at reasonable points for that, so that you have time to send out the invitations. Make sure they have advance notice. You don't want to send out an invitation about a dog and pony show for your new design a day and a half before the actual meeting. We had this all planned out so that July 1st hit. After the July 4th holiday, we sent out a message through our campus community. We had a note on the portal. We had a note we were using First Class, I think, for legacy email systems. We put announcements on that. We already had a newsletter for our communicators network, made sure everybody knew there, and then even put up some flyers in various places to let people know that this was coming. And that meeting then was later in July. Gave them at least, I think, 2 weeks notice so that they could figure out who to send if they couldn't come. Send your invitations and develop a handout so that they have something to take away back to the people they're going to communicate to, so that they're not having to remember what they were told, because then they might remember what they wanted to hear. So the handout is a nice thing for them to be able to point to, and you can point to correct them if need be. So in that session, this is where you get to show what you've been doing and announce it to them. Start with why. People want to know, why are you doing this to us? Why does our website need to change? For us, it was very simple. It's like mobile. We had to get a responsive design in there. And also, we were addressing the pain points. We know that you thought these templates were rigid. We're giving you more flexibility for this. So tell them what's changing. That the look and feel is going to change. your abilities with what you can do with your site is going to change, but also tell them what's staying the same. You're still going to be in WordPress. For us, this was the case. We're not going to change your site search. We're not going to change the other things that are layered in that you might be dealing with. This doesn't affect first class. This doesn't affect your portal. This doesn't affect Blackboard, your LIM system. So, and then tell them when this is happening so they get an idea of what to expect. And then leave them with what they need to do, which is bring this back to your larger team and make sure they're in the loop. And tell us, give them an opportunity to give some feedback. For us, in our session, we left them of what they need to do is fill out a web form that tells us when you want to migrate into this new design. Because I told them, if we haven't already been in touch with you, you're not a key site, you're not going to be there at launch, but we can get you in as soon as we're done launching. And so that sign-up sheet gave us a good 30, 40 sites in line of motivated people that wanted to experience the new design so that we could, after launch, hit the ground running with them. So the public, that's another people that you have to communicate to on all this. The public communication plan also needs to be put through. So at UMaine, we built a mini site that talked about the new design. The mini site was in the old design, so it just had screenshots. Again, when you're sharing all this stuff, don't try to do a live demo, not only because it might not work exactly right, but because if they see it's live, you'll get interrupted with questions that they might go down a rabbit hole, and all of a sudden the purpose of the meeting of telling them what they need to be doing to be prepare for this turns into, why don't you do this with the website instead, or other topics that you hadn't intended. Same thing with the public. You don't really want to give them early access to something that's not quite baked yet. So a couple screenshots. Update your homepage to link to this mini site perhaps, or a press release announcement of it's coming. Update the key sites that people are going to be coming to that are going to be switching, so that if they're coming to this other key site through Google, your website doesn't have just one front door. It has a million front doors. You want to make sure that those entrance pages, and you can identify them with Google Analytics so you see what your entrance pages are, and put some notes on there to let them know that this is happening. And then update the entry pages that are going to be affected. Engagement opportunity here is you could set up a public sign-up sheet to be notified when the site launches, so that your engaged community can be reached out to come check out the site now once you're ready for them to see it launched. And then that opt-in gives you a nice mailing list for future announcements down the road if you had other initiatives you wanted to solicit usability studies from the public. So when did you get to launch day? That's going to be a very stressful day. For us, started early in the morning, August 15th, I think it was, and new site went up, new site crashed, old site went up while we worked out what was going on, because everybody that was hitting it suddenly brought it down to its knees. Had to tweak micro caching and all sorts of stuff that's technical. I developed websites in 1996, but I do not know what caching server magic actually is involved with, so don't ask me about what we did for those performance issues. But through working, we had planned for that. We had cleared off the plate. This was our focus for the day, and by, I would say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon or so, it was back up, and it was stable. And it was a little slower than we really wanted, but it wasn't crashing. So that was a success. After it launched, we sent out messages to everyone that it's up, it's ready, it's for real now. Go check it out. Don't assume, here we go. Don't assume that your audience is just going to notice that the new site's live. Let them know what to go check out. Let them know here's where our A to Z directory is, because that was an important feature we learned that we need to keep. Involve your campus news team, if you have such a thing, the communications team. So you can send out a press release, you can let your campus community know, and make sure that they're coming back in to take a look at what's happening. And expect the unexpected, as I said. So once that's all done, And what we did was we had a moratorium on any new sites going into the new design for a full 2 weeks after we launched. Lots of people were chomping at the bit to get in to the new site design once they saw that it was live. And we had to really rein those expectations in that we needed to shake this out for at least 2 weeks for performance and everything. And then we started the process of the post-launch support and training. So our tactic of launching core key sites allowed us to minimize the initial training demands. We had some pre-training for the key site stakeholders, so they were in the system, using the system before it launched. But the other folks that were in there, we had batches of sites that were coming in for this flip. So every week we were training a new group of people. Every week a group of people that had been trained was starting to work on their migrated site. Every week another group of people was finishing and letting us know they were ready. Every week we were reviewing another site. And this was all layered in. So in any given week we were doing all of these tasks for different batches. And then the finished batches would get launched, and we would let our news team know, and they would send out a press release about the just an announcement on the website, news site, that these are the new sites that have launched this week. So site migrations, I got ahead of myself. There we go. But when you're doing these migrations, this is other communication pieces you're going to need. You're going to need templates for the emails that you're going to send out, because you're going to be sending out a lot of them. And you want to make sure that you don't forget to tell one person what you told 5 other people. You need guidance for site improvements. That language needs to be developed so that as you're reviewing what they're doing in your new template, you can quickly grab some boilerplate to guide them on, this is what you should be doing. You really shouldn't try to put too many things in your top nav and all this type of stuff. And again, a template for your announcements that the news team is going to send out. Prioritizing your migrations is good. Giving web analytics a shout out for identifying the sites that get lots of traffic. That's what we started really doing, was as we were migrating, we had a running list of somebody gets in the slot, what's their Google Analytics, their priority for us to be poking at them. Because some of these folks that wanted to migrate had a site that might have gotten 2% of our web traffic. So we still brought them in, but we didn't really care how long they took. But something like Dorf's office is top site, and they were reluctant, so we had to poke them, and they finally launched last month, so almost 2 years afterwards. Where to go next? Once the project's in the rearview mirror, keep the momentum going. Additional trainings. We have kept that weekly WordPress training going. Prior to the redesign, we would train people in WordPress maybe once a month. We'd offer a training session, and we'd get 8 people showing up. But once we started doing it regularly, every week, and word got out on campus, you had faculty members that had a student that they knew was going to be working on the website. They knew that every Thursday at 10 a.m. we're training. They'd send them over, and we still do that to this day. And I would strongly recommend, if you can get into a training regimen like that, that is so key for good communication, because it gives the community the insight that you are a service for them, and you are the go-to people for their web needs. They don't have to go figure out how to do something in WordPress just by Googling on the internet. We've started layering in additional trainings now. We're doing SEO every 2 weeks. Eventually, we're going to do one for web analytics, probably on the alternating 2-week schedule. And then, again, we still have the web advisory group that we meet once every 2 months, just to touch base, hear what's going on with other different web properties. And then once you've launched, you can start revisiting some of these parking lot ideas that were out of scope. We started layering in better search functionality. We still have Google custom search engine going on, but it looks like our site now, and we have features where if you're on the home page and you searches everything. If you're on a sub-site, same search box, just searches that site with a toggle to switch over to the whole site. Little usability tweaks like that. occasionally over the summertime, pick an area that's key, do a usability study. Just the usability study on what that one page is doing for folks will inform design decisions that may affect the whole site for the better. So, you know, you're never really done, and as long as you are still giving that public-facing, you know, we've got training, we've got usability, we've got this going on, it reinforces the perception of your audience, of your community, that the web is not a magazine. It's not something that is out the door and, okay, I can go on to another project. It is always going to be an ongoing evolution, and they start to think of it as a communications channel and not just a collection of documents that they are making available online for folks.
Your weekly training, how's that run? Is this sort of like a drop-in, ask questions, or is there a...
Yeah. So the question is, you know, how the weekly training works, and it is, we make sure everyone knows that it happens. We tell them you can just show up. We prefer that you let us know that you're showing up, just because once every couple of months, that 10 a.m. slot is co-opted by something more important, like, you know, my boss's boss has some sort of important meeting for folks. So we're in the afternoon instead, or I'm at WordCamp, and so, you know, somebody else might have to do the training if somebody showed up. So there is that. But so the answer to how those are in, both drop in, and we prefer to be let known ahead of time. The SEO sessions that we're doing every 2 weeks is much more of let us know ahead of time that you're coming, because we want to be able to take a look at your site and give you some good targeted advice that will work for your site, not just general, here's SEO and here's heading tags and such. But even that base level of SEO, and it's just an hour that we spend with them, but it just gets them thinking about how to structure their site better. And the recognition of, oh, an H2 tag that I'm using to make the text blue and bigger actually has meaning for the search engine, and that's like a light bulb will go off on their head. I don't have to just make this line bold to make to identify it as a smaller heading. I could use the H4 style. So that's my slides. So I'm sure I got done really quick, but I wanted this to be more interactive. So I'd like to hear from you guys. Anybody else? I mean, just maybe a show of hands of who's gone through a redesign process with WordPress and lots of you. How many have it on the horizon? They know it's coming. A couple of you, great. Yep, both. So, what's gone well, and what's what have you learned from your own redesign experiences? So, anybody want to share?
So what redesign we did about 5 years ago, almost now, was a big shift. Mm-hmm. Some sites were coming in from WordPress, some were coming in from HTML. Mm-hmm. And so we set up this migration process that you sort of described. Yeah. And in that case, it was really good because it gave us a chance to discuss their site content. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just a new theme. It was like, let's think about what you've been doing on your own for the last mm-hmm. 5 years. The drawback now is we want to get into a more of an evolution mindset instead mm-hmm. of a redesign mindset, but we have this sort of various stages of migration that we're in. Yeah. Tiny fraction of people are like still off mm-hmm. in the woods. Mm-hmm. Most people are in that design, and then now we already have a new design. Yep. So I think the challenge is, when can we get everyone into the new design and then get them out of the migration mindset and more into this, like, mm-hmm. hey, things are just going to change here and there. We're going to communicate about it, but mostly it's going to be for the better, and it's going to be incremental. Sure. So for the folks that are maybe watching online, the question or the observation was just that the shift after a redesign from a migration mindset to an evolution mindset, and how this works. And that's a great point. What we found was, after we had been living in this new design for a while, we had constituents that we hadn't even approached, because they had their own look and feel. They had the money to go their own way, so they were their own way. And they came to us and they said, we want to be a part of the fold now that we see that this does new things. Mainly, for a lot of the times, it was because their wonderful design that they had done in 2011, 2012
mobile friendly, or they had a mobile friendly version that they had to separately maintain. And getting them into the fold, yeah, outside of WordPress altogether is a whole other project. And then what you'll also find with the migration process is you'll have those early adopters that came in at first, key sites, or these people that signed up right away. They may have launched their site in the new design, but now they want to change that up. And you need to have a plan then. It was easy when it was going from the old server to the new server, because you set up the new server, it's just not publicly available in that multi-site environment. But once you get to that point of this new site is on the same server and needs to be another new site, figuring out the best tactic. We originally in the old system had like a QA server that we would move sites to work on and then move them back. But in the new server stack, it just seemed not to work as well. So now what we do is we set up yet another new site in the multi-site environment. It's the same site name, but just with a different subdomain attribute to it, new.umain. And they work in parallel. They have two sites. One's the new site, one's the newer new site. And then they decide that they're ready. We just archive that old site and change the URL for the new site. There you go. Yes.
I come from an agency background,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I am doing redesigns and have the monitorizer at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're definitely seeing a shift to the kind of evolutionary mindset rather than a redesign every 5 years.
Yes.
So I had wondered if you had taken any steps to implement digital components for your brand guidelines or style guides that can help achieve consistency throughout these sorts of processes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question was an again, that as you're getting into this more evolutionary mindset, what other collateral has been developed to aid in branding? That was the great news for our project. Now, other people might, if you're tackling a branding initiative at the same time as the redesign, I'm sorry, it's tough to do both at the same time. Prior to my joining UMaine, they had done a great job with a big branding initiative. Yeah, I've heard stories of blood in the streets as people were torches and pitchforks about having to use this is where the logo needs to go, and you cannot do this with the logo and that type of thing. And I'll just bring it up. We've got a site. Let's go to the web here. So we just umaine.edu/brand. And this is what we set up in the new design, is just a branding toolbox that we set up for folks. And here's your logos, here's your colors, typography, print template, digital templates. And this is for email, for presentations, for social media, for the actual web. We really just invite them to contact us, but we wanted to use our own website to show this information, so they can go and they can say, what's the what are the graphics, what are the digital templates, what are the logos, this type of thing, so they can self-serve.
And what's the sort of adoption internally for that tool?
It's really gotten good. When I first got there was still resistance. And part of it is how you talk about these things for folks. Prior to the branding, we had a lot of folks had their own logos. We stopped calling them logos. We call them departmental graphics. It's okay to have a departmental graphic that isn't the UMaine crest, but that's not your logo anymore. That's your departmental graphic. You still have to have the logo. And that mindset shift gave them that comfort zone of still being able to have some of their own identity while understanding the larger brand. And so if I go to, for example, nsfa.umaine, this is one site that the School of Forest Resources had. Oh, I said MSFA, didn't I? So this was Natural Sciences, Forestry, and Agriculture. They had this little tree logo that they really wanted to use. And then eventually it went down to, it's not even appearing anymore on their site because we let them use it, But then they came to their own decision that it really didn't work all that well. They really didn't feel it necessary in the new design. So, and unfortunately, this is one of those things that just because people can do things doesn't necessarily mean they should. But it's still, it's mobile friendly, and if they wanted to have a bunch of circles on here, that's one of these cases where how we will get them to change away from this is we will find out if they should, because maybe they shouldn't. I, as a designer, kind of a designer, I chafe at this a little bit, but if we did usability studies and this worked well, then why make them change? Because usability needs to drive the design. I'll just go back to our home page as a, there we are. So, any other questions? I don't know how much time we have left here. Quite a bit. 15 minutes, great. Yeah.
So I'm encountering, I'm not doing WordPress design, but we're on the portal. And one of the things that we found is trying to find the right balance between stakeholder involvement, get input into the project, and then letting people know after the fact, and people saying, well, why didn't you let me know sooner, or why wasn't I involved earlier?
Mm-hmm.
How do you find that balance? How do you let people down gently that maybe their input wasn't needed for, for the project?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question was around the fine line of involvement and decision making, how to toe that line so that people feel involved, even if they might not be the decision makers for the project, because you want to keep your decision makers a tight-knit group. It really is a balancing act. That was where our communication plan internally really came up. Again, start from the beginning, even as the project's pitched. Make sure that the people that are approving the project know what their expectations are. Make sure that the people on your core advisory group know what their role is going to be going forward at the different phases of the project. And then once you announce it to the broader community, you will get people that are like, I want to be involved. And you can find ways for them to be involved through feedback without devolving into analysis paralysis where they feel like they're suddenly having to make a decision. I had at my previous job, there was a colleague of mine that just made an observation on her own that whenever she was sent a document in QA, she felt that she had to come up with something to change about it just to prove that she had looked at it and done her work. And when I heard that, that's where you get into an analysis paralysis loop, is if every time you send a draft to somebody and they send it back with tweaking something, you're never going to be done. So it's a matter, instead of sending it off for them to sign off on, just send it off to them saying, this is what we're doing, and this is what it looks like now, and here's where your feedback was applied and how we worked it in. And if it was something that just wasn't in the cards, then that's a matter of identifying why it wasn't in the cards. Like, we had to make our August 15th launch. We couldn't put that in. It was, move the launch past when students are coming in. Or we will do this at a future phase. It's on our parking lot. I still, with my web advisory group, have a ongoing parking lot item about broken link checking. We had a broken link checker plugin for WordPress that brought the server to its knees because of how it works. So we had to turn it off. They miss it terribly. And now I'm really looking at services like Site and Crew as possibly ways of bringing that back for folks. Do it outside of WordPress. But it is a perennial topic, and I acknowledge it. And whenever we have a web advisory group, I bring up the parking lot items, and I just point that one out and say, we haven't forgotten about it, but no, I don't have any progress to share just yet. And part of that is money. I mean, Site and Crew isn't free. So did I answer your question pretty much? Okay. Yes.
Can I just add to that based on our migrations? We've migrated over 18 months. And from the beginning, we used Agile to a degree. So we had monthly public demos of what we were working on. Everyone was invited. There were people who showed up more regularly than not. And we also kept a public, at least within the community, backlog of feature requests. So everyone saw that their feature requests had been heard. Now, we were constantly moving things to the bottom because they either cost too much or were only needed by one person. But that way everyone at least felt like I'm being heard. I see the
Mhm.
backlog. They may get to it someday.
Mhm.
No, our internal team knew that that's probably not going to happen. So that way, it felt invited.
So for the folks on listening online, there was an observation about with the Agile approach of making sure everyone is in the loop on feature requests, can see the prioritization, and understand that even if they're not being acted on, they're being heard. And that's where we're at as well. I'm spinning up a mailing list for my WordPress community that's going to be launching before students get back this year. And it's going to start proactively. I don't know if it's going to be quarterly or bi-monthly, but sending out a communication to all my WordPress users to let them know what we're doing with the website, because we have been making incremental changes. We've layered in things like an automated personnel directory for a site. We've layered in things like we're working on a map solution now for the sites to use, making sure that they're aware of these new tools, because sometimes somebody who attended the training back in late 2015 doesn't know that the site can do these things now because they were never told in that training and they haven't come back for a second one. So getting that communication out there reinforces the idea that this is an iterative process now. I'm hoping that we don't have to go back to the drawing board and completely redesign the site in the near future. I'm hoping that we'll just continue incrementally to make improvements so that 5 years from now, maybe the site will look completely different, but nobody will have noticed it because it was so incremental. Kind of like Amazon. Amazon doesn't just radically pull down one site and turn on another in one day. But if you go back in the Wayback Machine and look at Amazon from 2005, Amazon from 2000, you can see it does look very different. And sometimes they'll make design decisions that you do notice right away, and other times they make design decisions that you don't. I mean, who remembers when the gold box deal of the day, Google treasure chest went away? It just wasn't there one day, and I probably didn't notice for 8 months, 10 months. So, yes.
Curious how many people communicate out regularly, like you say, from either web development team or the communications team about the website, and whether it's newsletter or posting on a blog, or and whether they think it's worth it.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody's ever going to read that stuff.
That's a great point. I am interested because this is something we've struggled with. We started with we have a user guide site, which you have to log into to see, to give an online user guide about the new theme. And I have great hopes of turning this into a best practices of the site by using posts and all this and that's how I'm going to try to build my newsletter, is putting posts into the user guide and then using MailChimp to squirt that out via email for folks. But there's also feedback forms on the training pieces so that they can let us know how useful it was. But keeping that up while you're also doing all of this that's the problem. And it's kind of the cobbler's children have no shoes issue, where the user guide was great when it first launched, but it's fallen out of date, and we need to do better at that ourselves. But anybody else's newsletter or what?
We have about 20 departments that are all local to the campus, so we're not distributed. We sold in we need a weekly meeting while we're doing the migrations to see what's going on, and that has just persisted. So now we just have this weekly meeting where we talk about new features and we review pages. So there's no email or any kind of push out, but there is this face-to-face meeting.
That's like 1 or 2 people from each department.
Yeah, usually it's 1 to 1.5 people, depending on if their boss wants to attend a certain meeting, or if we bring in admissions to talk about who admissions needs. Sometimes we bring in guest speakers from other universities or Harvard, if you're involved in one spot.
Yeah.
There are a few examples of some UK institutions as well. I know 2 off the top of my head where the development teams do keep the blog, so they work on a weekly sprint basis, and they'll push the net to their blog. I don't know if it's actually read. That's a different story, but they've been keeping that up for a good few years.
Yeah. So yeah, some of the solutions have been face-to-face meetings, blogs, email. Yeah, and again, even if it's not read, I mean, I had somebody come in. We reached out to them because we identified their site hadn't migrated yet. They hadn't asked about it, so we reached out to them. This was November of last year. So we'd been in the new site for a year and a couple months, and said, when would you like to migrate? When would be a good time of year for you to be able to do this? And she came back and said, I had when did this, you changed the site? She had never gone to the homepage. She just went to her own site, and that was her world. And that's okay. I tell people all the time, we live and breathe this daily. We know about it, but they've got their own job. It was a site about volunteering, and she's got her job that's not web-based. The website's there to talk about what they do, but it's not their life. So you need to be able to use your analytics to look at those outliers that might be getting traffic that are still in that old design, so you can reach out to them and reach out to them with an acknowledgement that this is an intrusion on their workload that you're going to help them with.
We have a listserv, and at least once a week, email that goes out about or some bigger things that are coming from the horizon. And then we have a monthly meeting that's sometimes training sessions, sometimes
So that, again, an observation around meetings and sessions. That brings up a good point for us as well. I alluded to the Communicators Network, which was a separate team from our web advisory group, but it's just a broader community of people that have to communicate on all sorts of issues. And it wasn't just web, it was print, it was photo and video, it was news releases. So during the summer especially, we try to have these Communicators Network sessions that are on a variety of topics. Back a few years ago, there were topics like branding and showing off. Here's the new PowerPoint templates for your presentations. Here's what we can do with standees for your events on stage. And occasionally, I will do one on web analytics, or I'll do one on the web for them. But I'm just one of many constituents that is communicating to that Communicators Network. But that kind of sign up is a great low impact way of people to feel like they're in the loop on a variety of subjects that you can just piggyback on. Okay, so we're about 5 minutes. If I know lunch is coming up, so I mean, if there's no other questions, y'all can get first in line. Oh yes, thank you. Let me bring up the slide again. Please leave feedback for me. Where's the? Yep, there we go. It's on the website for the speaker as well, but my survey is number 395. So great. And also, there's materials on the Google link here. If you wanted to use that, let's just copy it. There's a control C on that, or Windows, yeah. Did that work for me? Yeah. So, no, that's not what I wanted. That's somebody else's. But anyway, there's a Google link in the presentation, and it goes to all the copies of all this collateral that we developed. So, the email templates, the handout that we gave to folks, the communication plan, timeline, and all that stuff. And you're welcome to cheat and use that. So, great. Thanks very much.